Okay, let's jump in. We're talking about new tariffs on imported goods today. And, you hear tariffs, maybe it sounds a bit distant, like paperwork somewhere. But what's really going on is these policies are actually hitting hard on Main Street, putting a real squeeze on small businesses across the U.S.
Yeah, it's really it's interesting to see how these big top-down trade decisions actually trickle down.
Yeah.
And they create these very real, very tough choices for the people running, our local restaurants, our shops, service companies.
Exactly.
It just shows how connected everything is, our local scene and the global economy.
Totally. And that's really what we wanted to get into with this deep dive. Let's maybe put the abstract theories aside for a bit. We're looking at the real world stuff, the consequences. Our goal here really is to understand how these tariffs are hitting businesses, right where they operate. What choices are owners making, and what does it mean for you, the listener?
Yeah, and to get that ground level view,
Yeah.
we focused on 3 different small business owners. We've got someone from food service, someone in retail, and another in property services. So quite different fields.
Gives us a good range of perspectives.
Definitely. Each one brings something unique to the table on this.
Okay, so first let's talk about Ashley. She runs a barbecue restaurant, been doing it for 15 years, which, in the restaurant game, that's a long time, speaks volumes.
It really does.
But now she's facing something pretty unprecedented for her business.
And with Ashley, the first thing you see really is the immediate hit she took on costs, her essential supplies.
Like what specifically?
Well, core things. Meats, obviously, for barbecue, but also paper products, disposables, even staples like eggs, vegetables. She said the prices on those just jumped almost overnight, seemed tied right to the tariffs.
Wow. So the obvious question then is, okay, just raise your menu prices, right? Pass it on.
Easier said than done, though.
Seems like it. Ashley felt that if she raised prices enough to actually cover those new costs, significantly, she'd risk losing her regulars, the people who've kept her going all these years.
Right. How much more would you pay for your usual barbecue plate before maybe thinking twice?
That's a good point. It really shines a light on businesses with really tight margins. Restaurants are often like that, aren't they?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Profitability can depend on just a small difference between costs and what they charge. So even a seemingly small cost increase can have a huge impact.
So what does she do? She's been absorbing most of it.
Pretty much, yeah. Eating into her profits directly.
Mm-hmm.
And to manage cash flow, she's had to turn to merchant cash advances.
Ah, okay. But there's a catch there, too, isn't there?
There is. It's a bit of a catch-22 because the general economic pressure has maybe led to a small dip in her sales overall.
Mm-hmm.
So the funding offers she gets now for those cash advances are actually less helpful. Lower amounts, maybe tougher terms. It's a real bind.
Yeah, that really shows how these problems connect. It's not just one price going up.
Exactly. It triggers a chain reaction. Lower sales mean less access to working capital.
Which makes it even harder to deal with the higher costs that caused the sales dip in the first place.
It's a tough cycle, a negative feedback loop, really.
And did she look for other suppliers? Try to find cheaper options?
She did. She looked around, did the research, but it turned out her current suppliers, they were already the lowest cost she could find.
So really stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Pretty much, yeah, up against a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And the really worrying thing listening to her is that she's genuinely concerned about staying open. The possibility of closing down if these costs don't ease up, that's where policy hits home, hard.
Yeah, that's the human side of it all. A community fixture for 15 years, jobs, a local spot, facing closure over these broader policies.
And the key takeaway, I think, from Ashley's story isn't just, low-margin businesses are struggling. It's why. Their model just doesn't have much wiggle room to absorb sudden shocks like this, especially compared to industries maybe with bigger markups.
And that reluctance to pass costs on to customers who might be price sensitive, it just creates this incredibly difficult position.
Exactly.
Okay, so next up, Paul. He's in retail. Now, his situation is a bit different, gives us another angle. His focus is on sourcing locally.
Right. So unlike Ashley, he's not seeing those direct tariff-related price jumps on the actual goods he sells.
But that doesn't mean he's unaffected.
Not at all. Paul's story is a good reminder that tariffs create these ripple effects through the economy. They hit businesses even if they aren't importing directly. His main challenge, it's cash flow.
How so?
Well, think about retail. He has to buy his inventory way in advance, sometimes like 6 months before he actually sells it and gets paid.
6 months is a long time to have your cash tied up.
It is. So he constantly needs financing, like lines of credit or loans, just to bridge that gap between paying suppliers and getting paid by customers.
Okay, I see. So even if the tariffs aren't hitting his product costs.
Right. The general economic uncertainty and these trade policies definitely contribute to that uncertainty. It makes getting and managing that essential financing trickier. Lenders might be more cautious, for example.
So it's more about the overall climate.
Precisely. Paul's business, even though it's locally focused, still relies on a relatively stable economy. If people start spending less because prices are up elsewhere due to tariffs, consumer confidence dips.
Or if the wider supply chain gets messy.
Exactly. Even a local player like Paul can feel that pinch. So the takeaway here is broader. Tariffs aren't just about import prices. They can create this nervousness, this uncertainty in the economy that affects really basic business functions like managing cash flow for lots of different businesses.
Makes sense. Okay, lastly, let's turn to Krissa. She manages a property preservation company, and her story, wow, it really shows how dramatic some of these price hikes have been.
Yeah, Chris's experience was pretty stark. She got hit by one key supplier with a price increase of 158%.
158%, that's staggering.
It's huge. Not gradual, just bam. And instantly, it meant her company was losing money on every job that used those specific supplies. Instantly unprofitable on that part of the work.
So what could she even do?
Well, she had to act fast, really fast. She immediately started hunting for new suppliers, looked at local options, alternatives, and given her location, she even started sourcing some things from Mexico, being close to the border.
That shows some real agility, some quick thinking.
Absolutely. That kind of adaptability is often what keeps businesses afloat in these situations.
Was she able to pass any of that massive increase onto her clients?
Some of it, yeah. She managed to increase her prices to clients by about 8%, which is obviously way less than the 158% hit she took.
Still, better than nothing, I suppose. How did clients react?
Apparently pretty well. She made a point of explaining why the prices were going up, being transparent about the tariff impact. And it sounds like that helped. They understood.
That's good. But even with finding new suppliers and passing on some cost, there must have been other impacts.
Oh, definitely. The whole experience, the risk, the uncertainty, it made her put the brakes on future plans. Things like expanding the business, hiring more people, stuff she was actively planning that's all on hold now. Too risky.
And she made a point, too, didn't she, about how these costs eventually find their way to everyone?
Yeah, a really crucial point. These business cost increases, whether it's materials for property preservation or ingredients for a restaurant, they inevitably filter through the system. Eventually, they tend to show up as higher prices for consumers down the line. It contributes to that broader inflation we all feel.
So Chris's story really highlights what? The proactive adaptation, finding workarounds?
Yes, definitely the adaptation, but also the limits of that. And it underscores that wider inflationary impact. The key takeaway isn't just find new suppliers. It's seeing how a big cost shock in one spot can ripple out and ultimately affect everyone's wallet.
Okay, so looking across these three stories, Ashley, Paul, Krissa, what's the common thread you see? For me, it's this incredible resilience, real determination to just keep going despite these major challenges.
Absolutely. You can hear it in their stories. These are people who are deeply committed to their businesses, sure, but also their staff, their communities. But, while we admire that resilience, we can't ignore the real consequences they're dealing with.
Right.
Like those shrinking profit margins that threaten whether they can even stay open, like the constant uncertainty that makes planning for the future almost impossible, and like stalled growth. Expansion plans shelved, hiring frozen. That affects the whole local economy, too.
So pulling it all together then, what does this mean for the listener? What do businesses like these actually need right now to navigate these kinds of choppy waters?
Well, if you connect these personal stories back to the bigger picture, a few things stand out. First, clarity, predictability. Businesses really need stable trade policies to make good long-term decisions. Constant change makes that very hard.
Right. Less uncertainty.
Exactly. Second, access to flexible financing. That's crucial for managing cash flow bumps and absorbing unexpected cost hits like these tariffs cost.
Like what Paul needs, even without direct tariff impact.
Precisely. And third, maybe just a deeper understanding for everyone of how interconnected things are, how global economics affects local businesses, and how business owners need to grasp that to navigate effectively.
Yeah, hearing these stories directly, it really makes it tangible, doesn't it? The human cost, the economic cost of policies that can seem pretty abstract otherwise.
It does. It's not just about numbers on a page, trade statistics. It's about livelihoods.
Yeah.
It's about the health of our local communities.
The restaurants we eat at, the shops we visit, the services we use.
Yeah. And maybe that leaves you, the listener, with something to think about. Just how connected is our economy, really? How do these global events ripple down to the businesses right in your own town? And maybe by extension to the prices you pay every day?
And it makes you wonder, perhaps, what role we can play as individuals or communities in supporting local businesses when they're navigating these really tough economic times.
A very relevant question right now.